Hey everybody. I have some thoughts. A few things have been occurring to me. I thought I knew what I was going to talk about, and then some things changed, and suddenly now I'm in a whole other place about what I'm going to talk about, what I should be talking about, and the whole nine. I think some of you guys know. I think I've mentioned there is a guy who's basically a progressive rock drummer out of England, and I have my name Andy Edwards, and I really like what he's been doing. And I like Andy because Andy, in fact, I'm doing what I'm doing to a degree because I saw Andy doing it and saying, you know what, it makes it possible, makes doing anything like this possible. Andy just burns, usually for 20 minutes at a time. Stream of consciousness, whatever's on his mind. And he's such a good speaker that he can pull it off. He can, without the edits, just go, dive right in, hit a topic. And he really knows his history well. He knows his history of music very well. He's very into jazz, knows the history of jazz in an almost encyclopedic sort of way. He really knows what he's talking about. And so I find myself listening to him going, yes, that's right. I know, because music history is a big deal to me. Musicology is a big deal to me. I like the specifics. I like knowing what we're talking about. I think you got to have that if you're going to make any kind of judgments about things, right? You've got to have a base. You've got to have some body of knowledge from which you can make some decisions. You can find out what your values are, all of that. So I have lots of books on music history and so forth because I like the topic. I liked it as a listener, trying to figure out, okay, what was this school of thought doing and what was that school of thought? Anyway. Andy did a video recently where he talked about, and he went into it with great trepidation because he knew he was going to probably get some flack about why do all jazz musicians sound the same. And what he was talking about, and he talked about there, but he talked about in other art forms, was in general, as a general statement, a homogenization in the arts in the last 30, 40 years, which it strikes me as a very self-evident thing. I'd see it in film and see it across the board. And I certainly see it across popular music, certainly, and I see it in jazz music too. I don't think it's a stretch. As a statement, it's not a stretch. The music in jazz, the music's become more prescriptive. The fact that there are music schools and it's all figured out, and there are people who are going to tell you this is the right way and the wrong way to play. Virtually everything makes it so that people are playing within stricter lines. Some folks will say, yes, it's that music's never been played better. And I would agree. Never played better and never less interesting. There is a cost to that level of virtuosity can mean other areas. Virtuosity does not by itself mean expressiveness. There are people who will make that argument. I will always disagree with them. I think will categorically say those sort of things are false. Doesn't mean you want to be a lousy player, that only lousy players are expressing. Of course not. We're trying to talk about some kind of balance between these factors. Anyway, Andy made the video. And some other guys who I'm aware of, Open Studio, a couple piano players who do a podcast. One guy probably around my age, the other guy younger. And they were tearing apart Andy's video to the point where they would play it, stop a sentence. No, that's right. No, that's right. I don't like where he's going with that. No, that's a terrible generalization. Wait a minute. Guys, he's burning for 20 minutes. It wasn't supposed to be a dissertation. It isn't a paper. But what struck me, what was a tell to me, was the guys at Open Studio. I sit there and said, oh, you're threatened. I mean, Andy's a YouTuber, just a guy talking. They were threatened. That's why this reaction from them. And it was sad to see, because Andy's too bright of a guy. But no, they were going to go after him with tooth and nail, because I think these guys are a product of who like what's going on now. They think what's going on now is Shangri-La or something. Okay, it's fine. But the idea of any criticism, boy, there was going to be no valid criticism of their fief. And I think that's part of the problem. Let me try to express it this way. I think what we're talking about when we get into these kind of discussions, very often, well, I'll give you a great example. Unscripted. I'm going to look for a book. Yep. Let's talk about dilettantism, having all the emotion in the world and not being able to transmit it, problem on one end, and the pedantic on the other. All the technique in the world, saying nothing. Zero, zilch, nada, the big goose egg, nothing. Right? Also, no good. I'm a trumpet player, right? I was reading a book on trumpet technique, curiously enough titled Trumpet Technique. This was by Frank Gabriel Campos, who was the top professor for trumpet at Ithaca College in upstate New York. Good school. I have friends who went to Ithaca. Ithaca's great. I was up there, actually. Ithaca's awesome. And Campos strikes me, from what I know of him, just wonderful, wonderful guy. Really knows his stuff. Great trumpet player, legit trumpet player. And here's a book that he was writing on technique, right? On this is how we do this. This is how we play this. This is how we, right? Those sort of fundamentals, not about artistic considerations, about purely playing the instrument. He started the book, though. His first chapter of the book, he talks about the danger of getting too pedantic and the danger on the other end of being so into the message that you've lost sight that you need to have technique. That neither of these extremes are desirable. They are both not desirable. I thought it was an amazing thing to say at the beginning of an argument that about technique, about something that would lead towards something more pedantic, to sit there and go, hey, technique's important, and I'm going there, and that's what we're going to talk about. But let's keep a balanced view that it's not the whole enchilada. It's an on-ramp to a highway that takes you to something artistic. Now, we don't want to get to a point where we've become the dilettante, right? But there's danger and gravity in both directions, and you want to stay clear of them. You want to be able to do something artistic that still has technical bona fides, for lack of a better term. It was always bona fides. Then somebody started saying, bona fides. They don't have the proper bona fides. Maybe I'm a Philistine because I don't say bona fides. I say bona fides. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. But now I'm showing my dilettantism. I think you know what I'm trying to say. I thought what Campos did, though, was spectacular, to balance those forces. And to say that technique in and of itself, wasn't the Holy Grail. And it's not. I don't think it is. And to only think of things, it's like guys who are, look, I love music theory, for instance. I love music theory. And there are folks who only want to talk about, boy, isn't the most wonderful thing, this E minor 7, sharp 9, whatever it is. You just like, well, you could think of it this way, but you could think of it that way. Also, if you could think of it like this or like this, they're both good choices. Okay, guys. Okay. That's great. Did it affect anybody? Now, if those things we're talking about, those, okay, they're effectual, and then, yeah, they're worthy. Let's talk about it. And it's good that we have the nomenclature and so that we know what we're talking about. But music theory folks, I mean, the deep in the weed guys, I think they believe it's not music theory to them. It's musical truth, which requires policing. Okay? There is no musical truth. If you want truth, take philosophy class. But there isn't. No. It's worthwhile. It's worth knowing. It's helpful. It can also get you stuck. It also can get you really stuck, thinking, am I doing the correct thing? Am I ticking off all the correct boxes? When it gets like that, it's not affecting anybody anymore. You're just being affected, and you're being stultified, and you're not being creative. So that can't be the answer. So it occurred to me too, one of my favorite people when it comes to having this sort of trying to find the balance. And again, in a lot of political things, it's not a bell curve, right? You could be off to another, and you think the pure, okay. In this particular area, I think it kind of a bell curve, and that the middle is more or less is kind of where you want to be. I always think of Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg made Jaws, and film people were very disappointed in him because they thought he was going to be the next great auteur, and now he had made a monster movie, made a Hollywood monster movie. They were aghast. What a sellout this was. But there's a thing, though. If you watch Jaws, it's an old movie at this point, but if you watch Jaws, it's a hell of a film. It's a damn good movie. And it was a blockbuster. Oh, it's not either or. And I think that's Spielberg's whole career. It's not either or. It doesn't have to be either or, right? It could be something entirely, it could balance the two. Why can't you make good movies, really good films that appeal to people? Why is that so impossible? And it's not impossible. And there are good films that can be made that might stretch people maybe sometimes, or more or less down broad, but could still be good films. And I think a lot of musical folks have lost that. They've forgotten that is even possible. They just want to play in their own scene. I don't want to say the open studio guys are siloed, but they're pretty siloed. The only thing that can be a thing is their thing. It would seem. I don't think they're terrible guys or anything like that. Not at all. But I don't agree with them. I think they're doing the music they so love a disservice. And they're convinced that folks today who are, in some cases, great players, right? There are great players right now, guys playing their ass off, but nobody hears them. You can say, oh, it's the system, and that doesn't change how great they are. Well, what it means they have less impact. And on some level, you've got to be, part of the gig is, on some level, you want to communicate to, not just to the cognoscenti. I think there is a responsibility. And why would we want to stay in closed systems? Maybe I've become a recovering jazz musician. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe that's what this whole phase is. But I for the life of me, it makes no sense to play to get the approval of the, I know guys in the legit world, and that's all they care about is somehow getting higher up on the ziggurat, and I don't know. I'd like to get all the guys I know who play legit music, who think that all there is to life is playing a part written by another person perfectly. And get them to hang out with singer-songwriters. They would be aghast. Absolutely aghast. Those same guys have no understanding of what jazz musicians do. The idea of coming up with your own ideas, creating, they can't imagine it. And it's not part of their world. And all of these separate fiefs do this. Our world is the whole world. Everything outside of that is strictly verboten. Kind of a self-serving argument, right? You win all the arguments, right? Because no one else is pure enough. I mean, so, and I'd like to get the singer-songwriter people, incidentally, to have to go play in an ensemble where there's a conductor and they have to play straight and nail their part. You know, some of us have done all those things. It doesn't mean we're better people either, but there is something to be said for having played in all of these different situations. Some better than others, obviously, but there's something to be said for getting all of those experiences in and having to appreciate a whole other way of tackling the problem, of communicating to people. So yeah, all of this is sort of running through my mind. And, the great musicians we revere, they weren't worrying about, we have to do what the elders told us. I always didn't like that argument. The reverence for the elders, how about, I don't think the elders were that worried about it. I think the elders were worried about doing something about them and their times. All we're doing is playing stuff that seems to be reverting. So I remember maybe it was one of my college professors saying, hey, jazz or something like it is eventually where we have to go. And I think he emphasized or something like it because jazz even then had become to a degree this prescriptive thing, codified thing. And there were boundaries and you couldn't go outside the boundaries. So, and that's true in so many styles at this point. So the culture is going to keep moving. I expect there to be tremendous change in the next 10, 20 years. There is going to need to be a sound that reflects that reality. And, I'm not giving up. I don't consider, I'm going to keep trying to find what does the now sound like and make that. It's not about playing my Charlier exercises perfectly. That can't be it. I practice every day. My horn's over there. I practice every day. I practice a lot. I work a lot of technical things. I'm always working on the horn. But all of that technical stuff, it's an on-ramp onto a superhighway that takes you to, hopefully, creativity. Again, the dilettantism is a bad thing. And you see a lot of it in popular music particularly. Boy, I might get in trouble now, right? But am I casting aspersions at everybody? No, but there are extremes there's got to be a balance there. There's got to be a balance there. And, guys who just are chop monsters and just playing all this stuff, okay, great. And guys playing two-note chords out of key, they're equally a problem. They're equally kind of a problem. I'm perfectly happy with adequate technique. You don't have to be a virtuoso. Adequate technique, good player, in tune, all the fundamentals, and saying something that's resonating with people and people are listening to it. I want to see that. I want to see that. And I want to see more people doing something creative. I know there's 12 notes. Yeah, we ran out of notes, in the 1920s, right? okay. The whole history of, Western classical music from the age of polyphony to Schoenberg, right, is that the widening of the harmonic palette. And then you run out of notes, and it was a tough century there. Couldn't figure out what to do. And it lost all its momentum as a movement, as a living movement. It's on a respirator at best. Jazz has had the same problem, except it did it in 40 years. Jazz is hyper-accelerated. Jazz moves fast. Went from, Louis Armstrong to Ornette Coleman in less than 40 years. Okay. And they ran into problems and went into other directions. So now we're just recycling and recycling. There's a lot of that going on. But if you're playing within the same basic confines that have been there for 40 or 50 years, you can't call that the great innovation and great stuff going on in music. It's not creative. It's maybe perfectly played, but it's not creative. I want good playing, but I want creative, interesting things that speaks to this time. I don't know where it's going to come from. I would like to see it come in a way that's sophisticated, harmonically, rhythmically, melodically, or very minimal. It could be very minimal, but have a lot of good stuff going on there, a lot to feed the brain, a lot to make you think. I'd like to see some really smart music. That's fine, but smart and still resonate with people in a current sort of way. You can't make me believe that such a thing is impossible. I don't buy it. So, this is a planting a flag sort of episode. I think I would, to whoever's going to be checking this out, I would want you as musical people to be thinking, at least keeping in mind those two extremes and the danger inherent in both of them, and charting a more middle course that way, but wanting creativity. If I had to place myself, so let's make it 100 points, right? At 100, you're a dilettante, and at 0, you're the ultimate pedant. I want to be at 51. I want to lean just a little bit more towards the message than absolute perfect technique. In the end, it's got to be about saying something, because that's what art is. All the technique in the world, all the music theory in the world, and all of that, it's all great, but it's still supposed to get you to that other place, that other action. So that's what I've got for you this week. Look, dudes, if you can, give me the like. I could use the like. You subscribe, but give me a like. The likes, I think, are more important. So, I'm just gonna keep doing these and see where they land and see how over time, it's gonna take a long time. But it's an experiment. I'm having fun with it. So that's it, cats. I will talk to you. I don't think I've said anything too egregious or extreme. I know there's always, well, who says you get to say this? What are your, okay. Maybe I'm a musically educated person with an opinion. Hey, maybe I'm that. Can you give me that? Did I do enough gigs to pass whatever bar? Come on, guys. Let's not get it. I really hope we don't get into that sort of stuff, because everyone's out there. Look, I'm assuming we're all musical people for the most part, and we've paid our dues, right? So, we get to have some thoughts and opinions. We get to. No matter how inconvenient that is, we get to do that. So, that's what I've got for y'all. Talk to you soon. Later.